Hello, everyone. You are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
A quick note that you can find Scenecraft on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. Today we'll be discussing a scene from the 2023 film John Wick Chapter 4, directed by Chad Stahelski. But as usual, let's kick off with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
So what have you guys been watching?
I recently saw Scream 6, which was directed by Tyler Gillette and Matt Bettinelli-Olpin. The movie was released in 2023, and the logline reads, "Following the latest ghost face killings, 4 survivors leave Woodsboro behind and start a fresh new chapter." So the last Scream film, Scream 5, was actually released last year in 2022, and Connor and I actually both saw that one together, and we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Scream 6 changes things up by moving the setting to New York City, and I'd say that the result feels like a breath of fresh air for the series. There are a handful of inventive set pieces and tense kills that are probably a little bit more memorable than the movie overall, but I still had a great time. Just from Scream standards, I know that the endings can be pretty over the top, but this one takes it to a whole new level. And I don't think it's necessarily in a good way. But if you enjoy slashers, I'm pretty confident that you'll enjoy this one. I would recommend Scream 6.
I have to come clean and say I don't think I haven't seen a Scream film.
Ever?
Oh, you got to watch one. I didn't see any until last year. Mark and I watched Scream. It was my first time.
I'm shocked by both of that.
I think it's one of those iconic movies you got to watch.
Yeah, Wes Craven.
Yeah, I don't know. I just have never really been interested in the slasher genre, like horror, but not like the classic slasher. I don't know, but willing to give it a try for sure.
Yeah, I don't think you can jump right into this one, but
No, I'd have to start.
You'd have to start from the beginning, but it's worth it. I think they're really fun, and the Scream series is definitely noted for this injection of meta commentary on horror movies.
Yeah.
And I'd say by Scream 6, it almost feels a little tiresome, but I still think it's a unique spin on the genre itself. I also watched the movie Election, which was directed by Alexander Payne and was released in 1999. The logline reads, "A high school history teacher attempts to sabotage a manipulative, ambitious girl's campaign to become school president." All right, so I have a vague recollection of this movie being released, and the poster kind of felt familiar, but I actually never saw it when it came out. And honestly, it's probably a good thing, because even though this movie appears to be this lighthearted comedy, it's definitely more of this devious, dark political satire. Reese Witherspoon, she plays a type A overachiever that will feel familiar to any fans of Elle Woods and Legally Blonde. But beyond her terrific performance, this film has this wacky visual language that just feels very bold and distinct in a way that you don't really see all that often anymore. The writing is really witty, and it has plenty of things to say about gender and politics, so I would recommend watching Election.
Yeah, I really want to see that one. I remember you were texting me about it right after you watched it the other week, and it sounds like a good 90s movie.
Yeah, it's this bizarre period of time right before the beginning of the 2000s, and it's just so weird to think that this came out when I was, growing up, and it just kind of passed me by, and then to go back and watch it and see that it still holds up pretty well. I think that's definitely a compliment to the movie.
Cool. We'll have to check it out.
Connor, what have you seen recently?
So I haven't seen a ton of stuff over the past few weeks, but I did see Spring Breakers, directed by Harmony Korine from 2013. And the logline is, for everybody that doesn't know, 4 college girls hold up a restaurant in order to fund their spring break vacation. While partying, drinking, and taking drugs, they are arrested only to be bailed out by a drug and arms dealer. So I had never seen this before. I know you guys had seen it. And I went to see this for the first time as part of A24's one night only 10-year anniversary screening at the Alamo Draft House, which was pretty fun. But honestly, I hated this movie. I know I've texted you guys about it, but to put it extremely politely, this just wasn't for me. I think there's a lot of debate that I've read after coming out of watching it around the artistic merit of this movie, and I just really, really have a hard time giving it any credit for that. To me, A24 is probably the best at getting people to talk about their movie, and I think the point of this movie isn't necessarily its story or the film. It's just the conversation it creates from the pure shock value of it. Even so, I smelled a lot of bullshit with this, so I would not recommend Spring Breakers.
Yeah, so this was A24's first like major
Yes.
release, right? Yeah, so I totally agree that they've gotten very good at balancing that like those talking points and buzz and the actual quality, amazing quality of the films themselves versus like one or the other.
Right.
They've really hit their stride with that. So this was so early on. Totally get what you mean.
It's kind of crazy that after this, it had enough success that they kept going. I'm guessing they probably had a few films, obviously, in the pipeline after this one, but for this to be their first film, it's kind of shocking.
Yeah, it's a stake in the ground for sure. The other one I saw, completely different. It was a movie called Witness for the Prosecution, directed by Billy Wilder. It's a black and white movie from 1957. And it's about a veteran British barrister who must defend his client in a murder trial that has surprise after surprise. So my wife and I love mysteries. You guys know that. So naturally, we're big fans of Agatha Christie. Neither of us had heard of this movie before. I'm guessing you probably haven't heard of this either. But it was number one on a lot of lists we saw for best Agatha Christie film adaptations. So we decided to watch it. And it turned out to be a great watch with a genuinely surprising twist at the end that neither of us saw coming at all. Like really genuinely shocking. So Cody, for you, it's half courtroom drama. Mark,
Love
for you,
that.
half murder mystery. And it
All
has
right.
all the charm of 1950s Hollywood, which just makes it like a very enjoyable, fun watch. So I definitely recommend checking out Witness for the Prosecution if you like a good mystery.
Were you influenced at all on your recent jury duty selection? Or
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that-
it was
yeah,
interesting
okay.
watching it, like going through that process at the same time. So I was selected for jury duty in a medical malpractice trial that I sat on for 6 days, and this felt like a nice way to have art imitate life a bit.
Or return to home.
What about you, Cody? What have you been watching?
So upon multiple recommendations from you guys, and sorry it took me so long, I finally had a chance to watch Coherence, the 2013 film by James Ward Birkitt.
Yes. So glad you watched this finally.
Yeah. It took so much pleading.
Yeah, you guys have raved and understandably. Yeah, the logline for the film is strange things begin to happen when a group of friends gather for a dinner party on an evening when a comet is passing overhead. So like I said, you guys have recommended this for a couple years now, maybe. I know you guys saw this a few years back. And I've always meant to watch it, finally got to it. I love how this filmmaker uses what is logistically a very straightforward premise to enhance the movie's conceptual complexity. Like actually shooting it over the course of 5 or 6 days, I think I read. Understandable how that's possible, but thematically it's really interesting and complex. It's clearly super low budget, and that shows, but it's to the benefit of the film. It's no fuss. It just consists of a group of improvising characters with very distinct personalities and relationships to one another, trying to figure out a mind-bending supernatural phenomenon. My only complaint about the film, I think, is that, like in many, many films we've all seen, the characters do things and act in a certain way that may seem idiotic or illogical at times, but hindsight for a moviegoer is always 20/20. And so with that said, overall, I think it was a very realistic impressive experience. So I would definitely recommend Coherence if you're into sci-fi.
So glad you liked it.
Yeah, me too. That's a relief.
Yeah, Connor was the first one to find this one. He recommended it to me, and after I had watched it, I kind of like second guessed everything I had seen. It's one of those movies that after you finish it,
you
it
love
makes
those.
you rethink everything.
Yeah, I love how it ended as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just really interesting, and I can't really dig into it too much without ruining the experience. So that's all I'll say is like if you enjoy sci-fi and you enjoy kind of that found footage feel, so to speak, it really actually adds to the tone of the movie. That is Coherence, 2013. And then next up, I went out to the theater to see Inside, which was released recently, maybe last week, and that was directed by Vasilis Katsoupis. The log line reads, a high-end art thief is trapped in a New York penthouse after his heist doesn't go as planned. Locked inside with nothing but priceless works of art, he must use all of his cunning and invention to survive. So I am so torn on Inside, because on one hand, this is completely worth watching just based on Willem Dafoe alone. I don't know one person that doesn't love Dafoe in everything he's in. He just makes everything better and interesting. And this is very clearly a one-man Dafoe show. He is on screen for nearly every second of the film, and just seeing him slowly lose his mind, unravel, go insane throughout the slow burn of the runtime is very impressive. On the other hand, thematically, it's very muddled and maybe trying to do too many things at once in a sense. It's trying to make some sort of high-minded statement about art as a whole and its purpose, while also sprinkling in thoughts on isolation, and has sort of an eat the rich motif as well. Just a lot happening, and it doesn't do any one of those things particularly well. But again, Dafoe, can't deny he's amazing, and the set design is incredible. The penthouse Dafoe is trapped in the film is way over-engineered beyond any realism. So it's just so fun to see Dafoe explore every nook and cranny of this set, and ultimately I would recommend Inside, as everyone just needs a little more Dafoe in their life.
I saw he was Letterboxd's most watched actor last year.
I saw that too.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's just the best.
He's so
This
good.
was pitched as Castaway inside a apartment complex. Is there any truth to that? Because that was catnip to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. The main difference being, it's like if you took the majority of the island sequence from Castaway, put it in a high-rise penthouse without this sort of catharsis of Chuck Nolan's relationship at the beginning and end of the film, and how that has impacted his life around him and the tragedy there, and him being able to move on from that. There's just none of that, which is why I have some hesitation about Inside. But it is seeing like a tour de force performance like Tom Hanks. So yeah, I would check it out. It's very interesting, if anything.
Yeah, and Dafoe in the upcoming Asteroid City, which that cast list is stacked.
Yeah.
I don't know how Wes
Incredible.
Anderson's able to rope in that many people.
I
He can't
love
be-
that Jason Schwartzman got top billing.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's like above Scarlett Johansson. It's amazing.
Tom Hanks, isn't he in Asteroid City too?
I think he is.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for the recommendations as always. So let's move into our discussion about Chad Stahelski's John Wick Chapter 4, starring Keanu Reeves and Donnie Yen, among many others. And as with all of our scene selections, beware of spoilers ahead.
Saying goodbyes?
Saying hello.
You think your wife can hear you?
No.
Then why bother?
Maybe I'm wrong.
So the logline for John Wick Chapter 4 reads, John Wick uncovers a path to defeating the High Table, but before he can earn his freedom, Wick must face off against a new enemy with powerful alliances across the globe and forces that turn old friends into foes. I think we do need to address 2 points here at the top before we get into our scene, and that is the really sad, untimely passing of Lance Reddick. It was great to see him once again in this film, and he's been such a big part of the film, and I think a lot of other stories and media we've loved throughout the years. So that was really sad to experience that in the theater, but I don't know about you guys, I could kind of feel the energy of appreciation around me at that moment where we're seeing him on screen again, interacting with these characters. So
Yeah.
rest in peace to Lance Reddick. And then the other thing we wanted to mention is this is naturally a film series, a genre that is really reliant on violence and gunplay and weaponry to tell its story. And as we're hot on the heels of yet another awful mass shooting event in Nashville, and I think we all just wanted to sort of acknowledge that it is strange reviewing this film, which fetishizes violence and guns in the wake of an event like this. And I do think that the filmmakers, and in terms of the genre, they've taken great pains to make John Wick feel like it's of another world, that it is almost cartoonish in its approach.
Yeah.
And all of the people shooting weapons, being killed, they're all terrible, terrible people. And therefore, I think it is okay to discuss this, to talk about it, but still acknowledging that in the real world equivalent, this is a horrible, serious problem, and a change does need to be made. But just wanted to say that at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for saying that, Cody.
Yeah, no, of course. But let's continue on and talk about the craft of the film itself. So, Mark, what did you think of John Wick Chapter 4?
All right, so I think I have a lot to say about this one, and I'll preface by saying that John Wick Chapter 4 is basically as good as it gets when it comes to what action movies have to offer. The fight sequences in this movie are probably the best in the series and maybe some of the best I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah, I agree.
Similar to the Mission Impossible movies, the John Wick franchise manages to outdo itself with each entry, and I'd even say that every action sequence in this film itself outdoes the one before it. And when you're this far into the series, you've basically weeded out anybody who was on the fence about the other movies. It's the fourth one of the series. So you either love it for what it is, and that's why you're seeing it opening weekend, or you've given up a long time ago. So I will say that this movie does have its faults. It does feel a bit too long for its own good. I honestly feel like it could have been split into two movies. I've read some interviews as to why he didn't want to do that, so I respect his decision to make it into one movie. But I guess the best analogy I can give for this film would be if you were going to a steakhouse and you're served this enormous steak with two tiny florets of broccoli. And, sure, you could argue that there's a balance between protein and vegetables. It could lead to a quote unquote better meal. But in the setting of a steakhouse, it's hard to complain about this giant steak that's cooked perfectly on your plate.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
You want
great.
a steak when you're going to a steakhouse. For
Exactly. And that's what you get when you see John Wick 4.
See, I would describe it more as like a really good burger.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I see
I mean,
what you're doing
still
there.
a meat. I
Yes.
You know what I mean? I guess you could say you could go to a burger house, but steakhouse just sounded.
Central metaphor, totally right.
Yeah. It is the Au Cheval burger of
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
Just perfectly done. So, unlike you guys, I had seen the first John Wick, but I was pretty behind in my John Wick watching. And I actually didn't get a chance to watch 2 or 3 before seeing this one. So, don't roast me. But weirdly, with John Wick, I think it almost doesn't matter. I was a little lost at times, but I got the gist of it. And there's so little dialogue to begin with that anytime a character talks, it's mostly expository, just to give the action some kind of structure and driving plot. And again, I'm not sure about 2 or 3, and it's been a while since I've seen the first one, but I love the color and the mood they set with the cinematography. the look they've created with these like burning reds, greens, this world lit by neon lights is a visual treat.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool world they build with this underground network of assassins. And I don't know what I'd call it, but I guess I'd say sleek retro touches like the radio DJ, the muscle cars, that special metro station with the huge paintings, the styling, etc. I absolutely loved the Paris setting. It's so cool to see the huge set pieces around the Arc de Triomphe, the steps of the Sacre Coeur. It's almost like now that the budget of these movies has probably grown so much, they think what would be the craziest shit we could try to pull off that no one else is crazy enough to try. And stopping traffic around the Arc de Triomphe to film that fight scene feels like it was exactly one of those conversations.
Yeah.
So cool to watch that. I had a ton of fun with this as well, Mark, and I saw this on a Monday night. My theater was completely packed with people, like totally sold out. And our audience was almost all couples, which I found pretty interesting. So John Wick, a big date night draw.
I saw it on a matinee showing a Saturday morning, and I think there was maybe 2 open seats in the entire theater.
Wow. Yeah. People loved it. They were going crazy for it.
Well, you guys, I think, absolutely nailed it and summed up my feelings on it. I will add just a slight bit of pessimism to this, only slight, in that I think since John Wick 1, there's been this tendency in the series to do this thematic hand waving. You know, it's sort of like it knows what it is and what it wants to be. It's an action movie first and foremost, but I feel like it is trying to say certain things about revenge and have this sort of emotional resonance that I don't really necessarily feel, especially coming from the fantastic Keanu Reeves. I just don't necessarily connect directly with his performance other than his physicality. When he's actually delivering lines, I'm sort of like, yeah, okay. That's what makes me think this is more of a burger. But everyone loves Keanu. I loved this movie, and I feel bad even complaining about it in any way because it just doesn't necessarily need that extra elevation that I think you could look for. But yeah, the world building and choreography behind the film is unparalleled by anything I could really name in a modern film. You were referring to the scene at the Arc de Triomphe, and that's like car kung fu, using cars and motorcycles as weapons and as bodies and slinging them at each other. It is just unbelievable what they're able to do, and I really loved my experience watching it. All right, well, let's dive into our scene selection, which this week we are going to call Dragon's Breath. And what that refers to is the scene in John Wick Chapter 4 where Wick is on the run from a multitude of assassins on the way to his sunrise duel and enters a huge abandoned Parisian apartment, more like a mansion actually, and it turns into a single take top-down shot.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's one of the most impressive sequences of the film.
So to back up a bit earlier, before this scene starts, we're seeing some random assassins testing out a bunch of different bullets. And Mark, I think you had mentioned they show a ammunition box called Dragon's Breath.
Yeah, so in addition to being just an ammunition, it also shoots out this fire that engulfs the victim as well.
So we're seeing John Wick basically being chased through this old abandoned mansion. And as he runs up the stairs, he's got assassins behind him. He now has the gun that has the Dragon's Breath bullets inside it. And we're seeing him use this Dragon's Breath ammunition in spectacular fashion, firing these huge muzzle flashes. And as he runs up the stairs, the camera starts to pull away in very kind of slow, smooth fashion and just pull upwards. And Cody, I think you mentioned this is actually a drone shot.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've actually seen some conflicting information about that, but the press materials say it was a drone, but other crew in camera department have said it's a combination of crane and something called spider cam, which is that technique you see watching football,
Hmm.
where a camera is suspended on these cables and able to just kind of float around the field. So really clever implementation here, if that's the case. But let's just refer to it as the drone shot. But anyway, you guys covered the basic description of the scene. Wick is just tactically walking from room to room in this Parisian mansion, just lighting up these assassins, basically beyond the pale of any realism. I don't know about you guys, but my theater was going crazy at this scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, one thing I really admire about this franchise, because they have so many action sequences and they always want to one up the one before it,
Mm-hmm.
basically it comes down to how do you differentiate each sequence from the one before it? Do you change the weapons? Do you change the environment? Is the
Right.
lighting different? Are there different characters and stakes involved? Or is the camera angle and perspective different?
Yeah.
And in this instance, we kind of have a combination of a lot of these, right? So we have this new weapon, we have different
Mhm.
lighting effects as a result, and then most importantly, it's the camera angle that's really, really different from anything that came before it.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason we really wanted to talk about this scene. We're seeing it get a lot of buzz too because it's just so different, and the technique here is what's super unique. I mean, I haven't seen anything quite like this on film before, and it is really saying something in a series that's so focused on amazing action sequences. This is maybe the best sequence out of the entire series, and it really stands out when seen next to all the others.
And in my mind, when I see an action movie, I usually kind of categorize them into two categories, which is you either have a movie that tries to hide the choreography through the
Mm.
use of quick cuts
Yes.
versus those that highlight it. And
Yes.
anybody who has seen a John Wick movie knows that one of the main draws is that the fight scenes almost play out like this intricate dance between all the actors involved. And there's no hiding anything in this. It's an aerial view of everybody that's involved
Right.
in this production, in this scene. And so I think this is just the perfect highlight of that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the John Wick series as a whole, before we're getting into this top-down long take territory, what we're used to is seeing a camera that's not fly on the wall, but sort of planted in reality and
Mhm.
just observing, kind of floating with this beautiful dance, as you say it, Mark, this ballet of gunfire and blade work and all of these various martial arts styles. We're just seeing it kind of play out in front of our eyes without needing to enhance or sometimes detract, honestly, in a lot of action films with the edit. And these movies have always prided themselves on that fact. And this is just, as you said, Mark, outdoing itself, taking that to the next logical step, which is long take, top down, floating room to room in a set with this outrageous weapon that is very visually striking. It really was just the high point of the film.
I would say that it also serves a practical purpose too, right? These shotgun blasts, by having this fire on the other side of it, what it does is it allows the audience to track the bullets a lot easier
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
But then also they're in this abandoned mansion where there's no real inspired lighting. And so by having these guys that are lit on fire from this gun, they're actually kind of lighting the room in some ways too,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a morose but practical use of the people that are killed in this scene.
Yeah, right. And I think right now we kind of have to talk about maybe the direct inspiration from this scene, right? It's in a series like John Wick where it almost feels like you're seeing a video game play out. This scene was very clearly and intentionally inspired by a video game. So this almost feels like the most video game moment because the camera angle, it almost feels like you're playing as John Wick as like the central character. So
Yeah.
it's a really great way to involve the audience in an unexpected way too. So the video game that inspired this was called Hong Kong Massacre. It was an indie game that directly inspired the look of the scene, right down to the huge explosive muzzle flashes we see from that ammunition John Wick is using. And there's a quote from Stahelski where he says, "The game was called Hong Kong Massacre. I love game culture. I'm not a big gamer myself, but I love the storylines. I love the visuals in Ghosts of Tsushima, Assassin's Creed, all these types of games, and we know a lot of people in that industry. I think it's interesting that between video games, animation, manga, Asian cinema, we're all kind of related. We all steal from each other. We're all seeing how crazy the other one's going to get, which is
That's
such a great
great.
quote. And apparently, he had never even played the game when he brought it in as inspiration. According to Scott Rogers, who's the second unit director on the film, he said Stahelski just brought in a promo video for the game and said he wanted to do that because he loved how you could see enemies coming in from all directions, that it wasn't just linear. It meant you could kind of foreshadow what is coming and direct an action sequence entirely differently.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that too, because when you can see the villains coming in before John Wick does, it just
Yeah.
adds to the suspense because you can see more than he can. And so you're anticipating his move, and you worry about him every single time he goes into another room, because you know there's a guy behind this lamppost,
Right.
or there's another guy behind the couch here. And so it just adds another level of tension.
Totally, Mark. And it sort of reminded me of this thing that is very common in action scenes as a whole, like especially older action scenes where they're fighting with swords,
Mm-hmm.
where someone in the group of villains steps up to fight the protagonist, and then the group is kind of all huddled behind, like waiting, but
Yeah.
they're kind of like striking poses and waiting for their chance to attack. But in reality, it's like, why don't five of them just approach the protagonist, and one of them just, jabs him in the back when he's not looking? The reason is movie, because it's a movie and it's not how it would play out in reality. So seeing something like this is amazing, because you, like you were saying, Mark, you can see people coming from other rooms, and it's all just timed so well with that whole concept in mind.
I can't imagine how many takes it must have taken for them to get the timing right on this. It must have been a colossal effort on everybody.
Yeah, because you're factoring in the choreography itself, which is, weeks, months long feat to get that all timed out, and you're working with armorers to make sure the set is safe amidst an industry where we've seen increased accidents surrounding that, and none of us can imagine how complicated that could be on a film like this. And then adding the element of a top-down camera,
Right.
Yeah. As if it couldn't get any more complicated.
and thematically, this one take shot doesn't necessarily say a ton about the character or the film, but more speaks to the nature of the filmmaking as a whole in the film, and that one-up mentality of like, let's go as impressive as we possibly can. Like, there's just not a lot to discuss in terms of, John Wick is feeling this way. He's lost his wife. He's set out for revenge.
Right.
This is just a raw, pure action scene, but on a technical level, there's just so much to explore.
I think you're spot on, Cody. But I think you also mentioned maybe a little bit later on in the scene, they use a dog once again.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you wanted to talk a little bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Loved the dog moment.
Yeah. I mean, in this film, we have Mr. Nobody, or, the tracker,
Right.
as the character is referred to as, who is this kind of unknown assassin who's been introduced into chapter 4 of the series. And with him, he has a assassin companion who is a dog, I think like a German Shepherd, maybe. They've strategically placed a canine in each of these films, all in relation to the first film, which was kind of the inciting incident of John Wick 1. And so that's been an important element to keep throughout for them. And what this dog is able to do as a thematic element in this overall abandoned mansion scene is show that John Wick still has a heart. He's got a soul. And I think Mr. Nobody, or the tracker, seeing John save his dog from one of these assassins, that's what allows him to change his mind about attempting to murder John and taking the bounty, and ultimately turns him to his side. Just seeing that John Wick cares about this animal way more than other human beings, clearly. But I feel like that's a common element throughout these films.
And let's face it, John Wick could have killed Mr. Nobody at this point too.
Yeah.
But instead he focuses on saving the dog instead.
Right. One other thing that I thought was interesting about this, and I think just John Wick does it as a series really well, to go off the video game thing, is this idea of spawning. just bad guys spawning like out of nowhere. And we're getting a great sense of that effect in this scene where they kind of come in off screen. We saw it at the Arc de Triomphe scene where bad guys would just sort of show up out of nowhere. But it adds to that living video game feel of the series.
Yeah, and even Connor, going back to what you were saying about like we are now in a video game. You are the player living through Wick. The way the scene kicks off is he's coming up this stairway, and as you said, that's when the camera kind of starts to float outward and over top of the characters and walls in the scene. And it is sort of that classic action video game establishing shot where you've just watched the cutscene.
Right.
And then the 235, 239 aspect ratio black bars kind of shift out of frame.
Right.
And you are now playing the video game. Your character is now playable. It's not a cutscene anymore. And it's at the wide shot, and then you're kind of just drifting around. It totally felt like that. So another really impressive element of the scene is the set itself. And we talked a little bit about it being kind of a walled facade where the camera can fly over top of various small vignettes or set pieces. But clearly this took so much time and effort to weather and degrade all of the worn out decor of the scene. And one thing we're looking at in particular is this giant hole in the middle of the ground. And right when you see that hole, you know that someone's going to fall through it or it's going to play some sort of role. And it actually took me back to seeing Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
I was thinking that while we were watching this.
Yeah. It just reminded me of that dilapidated brownstone in New York that Kevin McAllister sets up booby traps in, and the giant hole that people fall through multiple times.
Yeah.
And of course, Wick and Mr. Nobody fall right through that.
Yeah. I have to think, or maybe I like to think, that there was some inspiration from Home Alone 2 in the way that this scene was crafted and put together, like a nice little in-joke for the audience. It's almost like that movie, but with actual guns and people actually dying.
The lighting is very similar for sure, too.
Yeah.
Another quick thing about the set, we're getting this checkerboard pattern on the floor throughout this entire long take. And that white and black checkered pattern adds a ton of contrast. Like you were talking about, Mark, with the Dragon's Breath explosive tendency of the ammunition, creating light and shadow and kind of geographically guiding us throughout the scene. The checker pattern also tries to do that for us too, because we're seeing people move across that pattern. Right. So we can actually recognize where all these dark clothed mercenaries are at any given time. And it just kind of overall helps with that geography.
Yeah, that's a great pickup, Cody. And I think there's something thematically cool about that too, right? It's almost like a game board or like a chessboard that we're seeing from overhead with these pieces moving around. So it definitely fits the overhead technique of this scene super well.
Yeah.
So as we're covering all the different elements of the scene, both visually and sonically, one thing we should mention is that the music of this scene in particular uses this kind of droning club beat to carry the scene along.
Yeah, it kind of helps give it that rhythm and momentum.
One thing that just stood out so clearly in this scene, again, in a movie that's just full of amazing stunt work, is the stunts in particular. I think the stunt people do such phenomenal work throughout this movie, but in this scene, there's great choreography. I think, Cody, you had pointed out that there was these little touches they had, like in the kitchen when John Wick shoots the stove, it actually lights on fire and somebody, one of the assassins catches on fire from that moment. There's just a lot of great physicality that happens throughout this scene.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so many pieces of the puzzle here in stunt department, everything from major falls, pyrotechnics where people are on fire, probably in some form in reality mixed with CG, maybe. But serious danger here, as well as just flat out fight choreography, military training to add some level of realism. in the way they're performing and holding their firearms and evading Wick. It's just a masterclass in stunt performance, and they deserve such a huge shout out. And
Yeah.
it's such a shame that the Academy at the moment doesn't recognize stunt performance as a
Right.
category, because it is such an art in and
It
of
is.
itself, and all of this on display in John Wick is proof of that.
Yeah, they deserve praise and recognition for this. It's next level.
Yeah, and the way that this scene starts to wrap up or transition, we see that drone camera movement actually come back into a perspective that we're more familiar with. It's a bit more intimate, and we're seeing this return to a focus on the characters. So John Wick and Mr. Nobody, we're getting a tighter shot where we're seeing them almost play this game of like peekaboo, shooting each other over their shoulders and going back and forth, playing with the set in a really fun, light moment of the scene. And it's a nice return for the audience to more character driven piece after we had just sort of watched this spectacular overhead sequence play out.
So the scene concludes with John Wick jumping out, I think, a 3-story building, hitting a car,
Yeah.
and then grimacing in pain, which I gotta say, you know, he if he's not dead from that, he'd be undeniably incapacitated.
What's the doctor's note on that?
Well, I think at a very safe call would be that several broken bones, unable to walk. He needs emergent treatment for sure.
It's so funny because from there, of course, is the famous scene where he has to walk up that gigantic set of steps to get to the soccer court twice. It's just no way.
Right, yeah.
By the way, for over a year now, I think so many of us have seen this BTS video of Keanu helping crew carry gear up those steps. We've seen that all over social media over and over, and it's so fun to see it actually come to pass now in the film itself, and how long those steps are and how agonizing that must have been to carry loads and loads of camera, lighting, grip gear up all of those steps. And even more credit to Keanu for just grabbing something, walking up, refusing help. He just seems like such an authentic, great guy.
He does.
So I think that pretty much covers what we're calling the Dragon's Breath scene, encompassing this incredible abandoned mansion set as a whole, including the really long overhead shot that everybody's talking about. And this is amongst many, many, many legendary action sequences in the film. Did you guys want to talk about any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I will say that in true John Wick fashion, overall action overshadows the plot in this. There's these ludicrous, archaic rules forcing a duel. And if you think about it for more than a second, I mean, it's absolutely preposterous. And as crazy as it is, I will say that it reads well on screen, and it injects a level of drama in this shorthanded way that you couldn't have otherwise. What I'm basically trying to say is that John Wick weaves together these means that are necessary to stage the next dramatic action sequence without ever feeling bogged down by any emotional weight needed to get there.
No, I totally get what you're saying. John Wick is very much a vehicle to drive action. Like, that's what it is at the end of the day, but that's what we're all here for. And the only other thing I wanted to add, aside from having a great time watching this and needing to watch 2 and 3, obviously, was I have to shout out Donnie Yen. He just blew me away in this, right? He's so good. I love the great cutscenes with him drinking wine, around this sequence that we just talked about. He's had like 3 glasses of red wine or something sitting at that cafe table by the time this scene ends, and the staircase scene starts up to the soccer court leading to our ending. He just did an amazing job in this movie.
It's such a nuanced performance, and I think both him and Keanu Reeves are either in their 60s or pushing 60 years old, which is a whole other level of, physicality that's required of them that I think you just have to commend them for, because it's pretty incredible what they're able to perform.
Connor, I love Donnie Yen's character as well, because this is what the ideal antagonist should be. It is a quote-unquote villain who has so much to lose. He's just not your traditional mustache-twirling villain. He just has so much depth to him in a movie that otherwise is all about that surface level but very complex action. It's a character with a lot of meat that you can sink your teeth into. Really love that aspect of the film.
I love all the meat metaphors happening in this episode.
Well, I think we can wrap up our discussion about John Wick Chapter 4. Thank you guys, as always, for your insights, and thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving this scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from John Wick Chapter 4? You can email us at scenecraftpodcast@gmail.com with any of your thoughts or comments. Or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest updates on the show. You can also support the podcast by leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. A very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. Stay tuned for our next episode on April 19th, where we'll be discussing The Big Lebowski for its 25th anniversary. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.